Welcome back to the Weekly Education Pulse. I'm Sami.
I'm Tony. Every week we break down the biggest developments shaping the international schools market across the globe, from policy shifts and investment trends to new school openings and emerging models.
This week we're switching gears and reflecting on the major conferences that we've been attending over the past few months, from Wellington College's Festival of Education to BETT Asia, Edutech Asia, the Outstanding Schools in the Middle East Conference, and of course, GESS Dubai.
It's been a full conference season, and there's been plenty to take away about where the sector is heading, from AI adoption to leadership culture to new educational models.
So let's get into it.
So, Sami, over the last few months, we've been hitting a big conference marathon, and honestly, it's one of the real highlights for me was Wellington College Bangkok Festival of Education. It's had incredible energy, a huge range of sessions, speakers, and themes, almost too much happening at once. You really had to make peace with the fact that you can't physically go and attend everything you want to, but in a way, that abundance was a good sign. It just showed how much the rich programming that was in place. And what really stood out for me was how much value there was outside of the formal sessions. The food courts, the corridor conversations, the informal networking. That's where some of the best insights happened. Those in between moments that just had as much impact as those keynotes. Among the sessions, there's a couple that really stood out to me. Shane Leaning's session on organizational change. He kept the focus firmly on people and culture, not new structures or trendy slogans or big bang transformations, but on the human side of change. It was grounded, realistic, and resonated with how schools actually operate. Then there was Chris Scorer's talk on data in schools. Again, very grounded. He didn't fall into the trap of just, fetishizing over dashboards or analytics. He was always brought it back to real questions that actually mattered for teachers and learners. The keynote with Francesca Martinez and Cindy Bishop was really powerful, and it anchored the whole festival. They talked about voice, agency, and courage, and how their personal journeys intersect with advocacy. It reminded everyone in the room that education isn't just about frameworks and strategies. It's about the kind of society, the kind of culture that schools help construct. And it added a sense of urgency and humanity to the day.
Oh, sounds quite impactful. I'm sorry that I missed that. But while you were at Wellington, Tony, I spent time in Dubai at the Outstanding Schools of the Middle East Conference. So I managed to provide an update to the audience on the international schools market in the GCC. But at the conference itself, the keynote was delivered by the Right Honourable Nick Gibb, who was the former schools minister in the UK. And look, whether or not you agree with his politics or style, he did come with conviction. He gave a fascinating inside look at how the government pushed the knowledge-rich model and how that fed into improvements in literacy across England. The emphasis on phonics, systematic instruction, curriculum coherence. It was all presented very clearly, and it reminded everyone why England has been a reference point for curriculum reform globally. But, and this is my big takeaway, it also left me with some huge questions about the future of British education, because while literacy gains are real, there wasn't much acknowledgement of what's happening now and also where the future's headed with education. So about competency-based learning, skills-first approaches, experiential models, and the tsunami of AI capability reshaping what students actually need to thrive. So the UK has arguably been one of the most traditional systems in terms of pedagogy and assessment, but the world around it is shifting. And I was surprised at just how little AI featured in his future-looking narrative. And it felt like a bit like a blind spot. So the keynote was strong, but also a reminder that in a multipolar world of education, even the major exporting systems have to evolve faster. But alongside that, another session that really caught my attention was a panel with Russell Cayley from Think Global School. And, Think Global, this is a school that basically says, what if the world is the classroom? What if learning is built around cultural immersion, mobility, and real-world problem-solving rather than classrooms and corridors? And it was a perfect counterpoint to Gibb's keynote, where Gibb champions a structured, static curriculum-first model. Russell's view almost rips the walls off the school entirely. And between those two moments, you could feel the tension, at the heart of the debate globally around education, which we're all wrestling with. is, do we double down on knowledge foundations or open up the boundaries of what a school can be? Do we keep teaching subjects or start teaching competencies? Do we prepare students for exams or for a world that doesn't care about exams? So, that's what made Outstanding Schools so insightful. The contrast, the friction, the sense that leaders in the region are genuinely trying to reconcile these competing philosophies.
That sounds fantastic. I'll probably maybe share with you my update from BETT Asia next. So BETT Asia is based in Malaysia, and there's a few things, themes that emerged from the sessions there, and the quality of the sessions was fantastic, really well organized, good balanced mix of AI and non-AI sessions, and the ministerial track. When they have their keynote, it's always an interesting thing to see where the ministers are in the region are thinking, the policymakers are thinking about AI, their systems, and how they're looking to improve not international education specifically, but the education of the state systems in their countries. One of the big shifts I noticed from last year was almost a normalization of AI. Last year, when a presenter asked who's actively using AI in the school, and you had one or two hands raised. This year, everyone's hands went up. No one was worried about using it. There's no novelty anymore. It was just embedded in practice. Is everyone there? No, but certainly everyone's seems to be giving it a go now. The only challenge is that some sessions haven't quite kept pace with where schools actually are. When AI becomes normal, the bar for insight gets way higher, and a few sessions still felt stuck in last year's conversation. Moving on to Edutech Asia, which is in Singapore, I saw a keynote by Graham Brown Martin on learning reimagined, and it was among the best I've seen. It was framed around the idea of the fifth industrial revolution being human-centered, with AI used to amplify creativity, well-being, and sustainability, not just to automate tasks. That shift from efficiency to humanity gave the whole conference a very different lens. And the strongest sessions across the board were the practical case studies. Now, schools being honest about what's working, what isn't, and what they do differently. And when that happens, learning value skyrockets. BETT Asia and Edutech both felt a little smaller as an overall conference this year. Now, there's maybe a few less exhibitors there, but certainly the conversations that were happening with the visitors and the exhibitors seemed to be very positive, really good interactions and definitely deep conversations, and hopefully support there for schools wanting to develop further. I think the highlight of when we go to these conferences, we always see all the exhibitors there, and I just want to give a shout out to Canva Education. The way that they deliver their booth, it's constantly busy. They've really mastered this, getting people to the booth, inspiring people, and it creates such a huge buzz. There was people queued up the whole time. They kind of set up this little classroom. Just it was, and sharing all the new tools that are available on Canva Education. So it was really great to see, and I think it's really interesting for all the other exhibitors to see. This is happening, how to really draw a crowd. Both events were really well run. BETT Asia and Edutech. Logistics, nice and clean, easy navigation, clear signage, really smooth registration. So who should go there? Who should go where? Well, for school leaders, BETT Asia, there's quite a bit of policy information there. AI as live practice and regional intelligence. Edutech Asia, definitely future-facing keynotes and practical innovations from schools. For exhibitors, BETT Asia is definitely a smaller footprint, but probably deeper conversations. Edutech Asia, a very strong day one, very, a lot of people around. Today's two probably, much more strategic in terms of following up with schools and other customers. Both are worthwhile. It just depends on your objectives.
Yeah, that's the important part is depending on, well, what's the reason for going to these conferences? Are you looking as a supplier to generate more interest in commercial business for yourself, or are you a school leader and looking for solutions to solve issues and problems or bottlenecks within your school's operations? And of course, well, just touching on the on this last one, no October, November season would be complete without GESS Dubai, easily the busiest, loudest, most colourful event on the education calendar. This year I had the pleasure of presenting twice. I did the wellbeing white paper, presented that on the wellbeing stage. And then another time I did a breakfast session in collaboration with BISA, where we talked about the international school growth dynamics in the GCC. And I had hosted a panel with Phil Redhead from EDV and also Clemmy Stewart, who's used to be the principal at Beach Hall School in Riyadh. And yeah, so those were two fantastic sessions to be part of. But what stood out for me was how hungry the audience was for real data. It's not about marketing lines, not anecdotes, but actual evidence-driven insights into where the sector is heading. And between the sessions, the traffic on the floor was strong. You couldn't walk 30 meters without getting pulled into a conversation about AI adoption in schools, teacher shortages, or the continued growth of schools within the GCC region. So it really felt like GESS has become the region's annual market temperature check. And I have to say, this year's booths were on another level. There was a beehive demonstration at one, so I tried to stay away from that. I didn't want to get stung, but somebody was actually taking them out and getting us to taste fresh honey, which was fantastic. So there was big crowds around there. There was also a robot dog trotting around like it owned the place, which I'm convinced had more followers than a lot of the startups in the section over there in that hall. But the thing that stopped me in my tracks was the racing simulation set up at Minerva World Academy. I managed to put my time on the board, but it was brilliant because it wasn't just entertainment, but it was a message as well. Because Minerva weren't saying, look at our tech. They're saying, look at the possibilities when a school doesn't need to look like a school anymore. So their whole presence kind of highlighted the fact that education is no longer confined to buildings or timetables, because we now have fully online pathways, hybrid models, modular curriculums, and global learning communities. And students can choose experience that match the world they're actually entering into. So not the industrial model that we've obviously inherited. So they had some of their students come down who actually are looking to be professional racing drivers in the future. And so they put in some times, unfortunately beat me, but it really did demonstrate how they can have a flexible learning schedule to build around their future career path, which was inspiring to see. And it's a reminder that the sector is fragmenting in multiple different pathways, so not just premium versus mid-market or IB versus British. The idea of what counts as a school is expanding dramatically. And yeah, what really struck me, I guess, was that conversations around innovation weren't coming only from vendors. School leaders and teachers were asking the same type of question, which is, what should school be now that technology, mobility, and globalization have changed everything else? So GESS had that energy this year, not just showcasing the products, but surfacing the deeper questions underneath them.
And that wraps up our episode of the Weekly Education Pulse for this week.
Yeah, from the conferences this year, one thing stood out. Everyone is searching for clarity in a landscape that's changing on multiple different fronts, be it recruitment, curriculum, technology, and affordability. The conversations are becoming more honest, more human, and more forward-looking.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. Which conferences did you attend this year, and what were your biggest takeaways? Drop a comment below.
We'll be back next week with more global updates, insights, and analysis from the international schools sector.
Till then, see you next time.